What's up, guys? So today the three questions I'm going to be looking at are: did the price of crypto affect you? Is it dangerous to be a darknet buyer? And will darknet markets die out as we see legalization like we have in Oregon? So let's get to it. So the first question: did the price of crypto affect you? It did a little bit. Obviously, I remember when Bitcoin went from, I don't know, I think it was like 8 grand to 19,000. It didn't happen for long, but it was a crazy jump. It was the highest we had seen Bitcoin. And I remember that because I had just bought some snow, and I was really angry because I was like, I could have gotten at least twice as much, maybe even more, with the bulk discount that comes with it. So yeah, it does to an extent. A lot of times you can just kind of wait it out. So you already have a profit margin, and with that, like, if it drops, you can kind of cover that drop because you're already, you're already in the black. You're not in the red. So I hope that answers it. The next question was: is it dangerous to be a darknet buyer? That question is really contingent on who you are as a person. Are you a conservative person that doesn't take a lot of risks? Because if so, maybe it's too risky. So for me, I was a darknet vendor, but I was also a darknet buyer. I would say, just judging from the busts that you see, it's infinitely easier to be a buyer than it is to be a seller. Just because, you don't have the scrutiny on you that you have when you're a seller. The thing that the federal government hates is, not getting a slice of the pie. We kind of have the mafia model here in America for taxation, where they don't actually want to own a piece of your business, but they want to be like the mafia and just take a percentage. You pay tribute every month or whatever, and that's your taxes. At the end of the day, like I classify it as slavery, because it's like, if I take your labor from you and I give you nothing in return, that's what it is. And if I take a part of your paycheck, that's what's happening. It's not a consensual relationship, So I think that's the thing that the feds really hate. They don't care about the spread of drugs. I think anyone that really thinks that just hasn't done a lot of research into the drug markets that existed even before the darknet did. So I hope that answers that one. And the last question was: will darknet markets die out as we see legalization like in Oregon? So for those of you that don't know, Oregon basically legalized all drugs. As long as it's a certain amount, small amounts. I mean, we're talking not just like cannabis, but everything. And if you get caught with something higher than that and you get a fine, then basically if you call this hotline, you don't have to pay the fine. So I hope that gets adopted on a national level. I really do. And the reason why I do is because at the end of the day, like, we've had all drugs legal before. That's not something that's new. Prohibition, it doesn't work. And I think that's one thing Oregon's come to realize. Whether throughout our history, whether it's alcohol or anything else that the government tends to prohibit, all it does is it makes that certain item or product extremely valuable, and you're always going to have someone that rises to the occasion to sell it. So Al Capone would have never been Al Capone had alcohol never been illegal, or he would have been, but he wouldn't have, you know what I'm saying, he wouldn't have made the amount of money that he made. So I think a lot of the times when the government makes something illegal or tries to prohibit something, it never works. And, for the people who say like, the war on drugs is effective, I would say, even in a maximum security prison, you can't stop the flow of narcotics. And that's a place that the government owns and controls completely, supposedly. So if you can't stop the control of drugs inside of a maximum security prison, what makes you think that you can stop it inside of a country of almost 400 million people? I think it's an asinine statement to make, that it's even remotely successful, because the amount of money that we spend on it is just ridiculous. But anyways, I digress. I know I'm going off topic here. I hope that answers the question about legalization. I don't see the markets going anywhere, because at the end of the day, even like with cannabis, they legalize cannabis in all these different states, but they tax it to a ridiculous point where, people are going to make a black market just to avoid the taxes. Like I sold moonshine, on the darknet, one of the many products I sold, but I sold that. How was I able to sell a legal product on the darknet? Why would you pay anyone Bitcoin for alcohol on the darknet? The answer is, you avoid taxes. Not only that, but a lot of states limit the proof that you can actually get. And, the alcohol that I'm producing is, anywhere from 160 to 180 proof. And there's some states that limit that, where you can only get 100 proof alcohol. You can't get anything that pure. And with my moonshine, I had never cut it. I never cut it with water. I never cut it with anything. It was completely right out of the still. I, tripled or quintuple filtered it, and that's what I put out there. So even just avoiding taxes, you're going to have a black market that's going to exist. You're always going to have people at the end of the day who rise to the occasion to sell something that's prohibited or banned or made illegal because it's profitable.